Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a September reading wrap up. I read a lot of books, a lot of physical books specifically. This alone is I just dropped all of the books. Hold on. This is just the physical books that I read. There are still more that I read on audiobook and digitally, so I would say I had a pretty good month, and we gotta go rapid fire because there's a lot of them. Before I say anything, I am looking over at my computer screen because that has all of my reviews on it and it has just information that I need. So if I'm looking over here, that is why. But we are starting with How to End a Love Story by Yulin Kwong. I gave this a 4.25 stars. I really liked it. So the author is actually a screenwriter, which I thought would make the book kind of read more like a script, but I actually thought that it made the book much more vivid. It made the dialogue much more believable. I thought this was a really interesting premise and just a really cool romance book. I really enjoyed this. I definitely recommend. Super fun, super cool. I also want to add with this book that I am such a sucker for books that are centered around the entertainment industry. I think it's just because I work in a creative field, like a creative industry, so reading books about that just makes me so excited, and I love it. So anytime a book is centered around film, entertainment, theater, I get very excited and I automatically rate it pretty high. Then I listened to the audiobook of Everyone in This Family Has Killed Someone. I really liked the premise. I love how they were kind of snowed in. I love that trope in mystery and thriller books. For me, what I didn't love was the narrator. I thought he was pretty annoying, and I didn't necessarily love how he revealed things super early on. I get that it was trying to be quirky, but to me, I just didn't enjoy that. I like being able to figure things out on my own rather than getting breadcrumbs placed. So I gave this a 3.5. I think I would read the second book, but I don't think I would rate the two books as a whole high together, just because they're okay as mysteries. The narrator is just not my favorite. Okay, then I picked up Magic Hour by Kristen Hanna. I went in thinking this was going to be a historical fiction book because that is what she's known for, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that it wasn't. This is just a regular, normal fiction book, and I gave this a 5 stars. I think this is my only 5 stars of the entire month. This book is absolutely beautiful. I was hooked from the first page. It is emotional. It is just so incredible. Words cannot even begin to explain this book. It's just, you root so much for all of the characters, and it's such a beautiful story. I think that you should definitely pick this up if you're a Kristen Hanna fan. Yes, it's not necessarily historical fiction, but I still think it is such an impactful and beautiful book. Okay, and then the classroom that I'm in this semester is reading The Shining by Stephen King, so I did read that this month. I just think that Stephen King is not for me. I read Misery last October, so last year, and I gave it a 3.5 stars because I liked the concept, but I wasn't a huge fan of the writing. And that's kind of how I felt with The Shining. I was bored. I felt like the writing was very rambly. I didn't necessarily love the characters. I liked Danny and I liked Mr. Ullman or Hallerman. I liked Hallerman and Danny, and that was pretty much it. So I gave this a 2 stars. I've just kind of decided that Stephen King just isn't my guy. I might still try some of his books because some of them sound interesting, but I don't know. I just feel like I'm not the biggest fan of his writing style. But if you're a Stephen King fan, give me tips because I really struggle with his books. I just struggle to be entertained. Okay, then I listened to the audiobook of Every Time You Hear That Song by Jenna Boris. I really liked this. I went into this not knowing much about it, and I was so just pleasantly surprised by this story. I gave this a 4.5 stars. I love just the road trip aspect, and I love how we get the 2 different time periods, but in the same location. I also love that this is a queer story and a queer journey. I'm trying to read more books about queer characters. That's just that's a personal goal of mine. And so I really, really enjoyed this. I think if I still think about it in the upcoming months, it might end up being a 5 star, but right now I left it at 4.5. It's really good. I definitely recommend. It's just so fast-paced and the story is super interesting, and I found myself just getting so invested in the storyline. So I definitely really liked this one. In honor of the movie trailer coming out this month, I picked up Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. A lot of people were really upset by the movie trailer, and so I wanted to see why people were upset. And I will say, after reading this book, I totally understand why they are upset. I actually really liked this. I struggle a lot with classics, but there are some classics that I love and adore. This one I gave a 4 stars. I think it's up there as a good classic. I was entertained. I thought the writing was absolutely beautiful. Like, the writing was definitely what stood out to me about this. I love how our narrator is Nellie. Like, that's such an interesting place to put the story, and it totally worked, and I really liked it. I definitely want to check out, I have Jane Eyre on my shelf as well, so I definitely want to pick that up and try out the Bronte sisters, but I really enjoyed this. I will be going to see the movie, but I feel like I won't like it, but we shall see. Okay, then I picked up Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. I feel like I might get like murdered in the comments about my opinion on this book. I did love the setting. Like, I loved kind of the cozy vibes, and I loved Elliot and Macy as friends. Like, I loved reading about them as they grew up together and sort of that relationship. I didn't love Macy. She just really annoyed me. And then I'm going to read a section of the Clockwork Reader's review of this book, because I was reading reviews of people that I follow, and I feel like she encompasses my thoughts on this book very, very well. And she's one of my favorite bookish creators. You guys should go check her out. So let me just read this little section to you. It says, what I didn't like. I didn't expect the majority of the romance to take place while they were in high school. That's not inherently a negative thing, but when I pick up an adult romance novel, I prefer to not spend most of the story reading about 17-year-olds, which I also agree. Speaking of them being teens, the way the characters spoke as teens versus how they spoke as adults was exactly the same. They felt too mature as teens because their behavior at 17 was interchangeable with how they were acting at 28. So they never really felt like teens when they were supposed to be. Also, the next part of the review that I'm going to read contains mild spoilers and trigger warnings for SA. So skip ahead to this timestamp if you don't want to hear spoilers or anything about that. And this is probably the biggest thing that I agree with. She says, there's a plot point in this book where one of the characters gets drunk at a party, wakes up with no memory that they had sex with someone, and thought that they were with someone else. They're confused about the situation for years afterwards, and even had an emotional breakdown the next time they tried to be intimate with someone. I found it odd and uncomfortable that the characters and the book itself never really addressed this, / framed it in a way that blamed the character for the situation. This was probably my biggest disappointment about this book, is they never expanded on the plot line. They never really tied up that plot line with a bow. It was never really talked about after that one part, and I felt like it was definitely a more prominent part of the story. And then those other 2 things mentioned, I also agreed with. So that is why I gave this book a 3.5 stars. It was just okay. I don't know if I would read it again. Then I picked up The Austen Escape by Catherine Rea is my guess. I gave this a 3 stars. It was a fun read. It was a cute little palette cleanser book, but it didn't really stick out to me. I didn't love the characters, particularly the best friend character in this. I just could not sympathize with her. I thought she was kind of a jerk. And I feel like the romance wasn't super fleshed out. We almost start in the wrong stage of the romance. I feel like we definitely should have gotten to see a little bit of the beginning before this book. So I gave it a 3. I think it's a nice book, and I definitely would recommend it to some people. It wasn't my favorite. It didn't super stick out to me. Okay, then I listened to the audiobook of Disaster in 3 Acts. I gave this a 4 stars. I think it was solid, and I liked the premise of it, and I loved Holden as a character and Holden's family and all of those characters. I didn't love our female main character. I thought she was incredibly selfish throughout the book, and towards the end, she didn't really, like, she kind of reflected on it, but I felt like it wasn't super resolved. Like, I don't think she changed that much. She still got everything that she wanted despite her being selfish. But all in all, I still enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the romance, which is why it gets a 4. But I honestly think the more that I think on it, I might end up lowering it. I did think the dialogue was really funny, and there was good banter, and all the side characters and side plots going on were nice, but I think the main female character really just I did not vibe with her. Okay, then I picked up Freshwater for Flowers by Valerie Perrin. This has been on my TBR for so long, so I'm really glad that I picked it up. I gave this a 3.5. I loved the writing. This was honestly some of the most beautiful writing that I read this month, aside from Wuthering Heights. Like, these two were up on the same pedestal writing wise. I will say I did get pretty bored. The main storyline doesn't really pick up until about halfway through the book. Like, there's little like allusions to like what the story will be at the beginning, but it doesn't like actually start until about halfway through. Yeah, so I was pretty bored for a lot of it, which is why it was a 3.5. But I do think that it's a good book, and I definitely would love to read Valerie Perrin's writing more, because she is a phenomenal writer, and I can see why this book has won several awards. Also, the cover is beautiful. Yeah, so I would definitely check this out. It's worth checking out. Okay, then I picked up a NetGalley book called The Faraway Inn. I gave this a 4.25 stars. I really liked it. It had the perfect like cozy fall vibes, even though it's set in summer. I think just like the cozy inn is really cool. And I loved our main character, and I loved the romance plotline. The only thing I felt that was missing was I wanted more world building. And I don't know if this is meant to be a series. If it is, then I totally get why there wasn't a lot of world building. But as a standalone book, I wanted to know more about this fantasy world and the different portals and like the different worlds that the portals lead to. Like, I would have just loved more of that. And I would have loved more of like the magic system. Like, we got a little bit of it, but I'd love more of it. But still 4.25, really entertaining, really good. I read it in the span of like 2 days. It was a great read. Then I listened to the audiobook of Love Redesigned. I am deciding between a 3 or 3.5 stars with this because it was really spicy, and I don't love spice, and I knew going in that it was going to be spicy, so that's kind of on me. But for me, the spice kind of took me out of the book, and I was very back and forth on how to feel about Julian. Like, there were moments where I really didn't like him and the choices that he made, and then there were moments where I was like, okay, wow, like, that was really sweet or really nice of him. So I was just very back and forth overall, and I also feel like this book didn't really have a storyline. I felt like it was just more character interactions. Like, yes, there was the story of them, like, fixing the house together, but I feel like there wasn't a lot of that. Like, we didn't get to see them kind of working on the house together. It was just a lot of isolated interactions with characters, which I didn't necessarily like. I like my books, even though they're romance books and romance is the central story, I really just would love it to have a plot line. And I felt like Thalia's character had a plot line. Like, her individual character had a story going on, but I feel like Julian didn't really. And so, like, whenever Julian was narrating, I was like, there's not really a lot happening. So I gave this a 3.5. I think I would still continue the series. Now that I know how much spice is in it, I can kind of mentally prepare myself, because I don't typically like spice. But I think the next one is going to focus on Rafa, who's the single dad, and I love the single dad trope, so I think that maybe I would pick that one up just to see. Okay, then I read Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. I really liked this. I gave this a 4.25 as well. This is another one where I felt like the story didn't super pick up until about halfway through the book, but this one I know is part of a duology, and so I feel like it almost made sense to place the plot line halfway through, because then the next book is going to focus on, you know, building up the Earth Seed and all of that. This reminded me a lot of The Road, which is another dystopian, like, classic that I've read. Just because it's a survival story and it's very dark, like this is. I love kind of the religious messaging of this. I think it was really interesting. I liked our main character a lot, but there were some other characters that I didn't necessarily love, which is why this is a 4.25. But I do think that this is worth reading, and it's on the banned book list, which is why I picked it up. So I think everyone should definitely check it out. Okay, and the last book that I read is Pride by Ivy Zobe. I think that's how you say it, but if I got it wrong, someone correct me in the comments. This is a Pride and Prejudice retelling set in Harlem with Afro-Latina families. And I really liked this. I think it was very true to the story, but had its own spin on it and its own plot lines. I think I'm gonna land on like a 3.5 for this, just because to me there was not a lot that I was super interested in. Like, as I was reading, I was like, okay, this is clearly this character and this is clearly this character. Like, I don't know, I felt like it was missing something, but I'm not really sure like what it was missing. However, I did love our main character. I thought she was kind of a strong, very, very good portrayal of Elizabeth. Maybe a little bit too mean. Maybe that's what I didn't like, is she was a little bit meaner than I feel like Elizabeth is, but maybe that's just me. But yeah, this was a good book, and I definitely recommend it to people that are big Jane Austen fans, big Pride and Prejudice fans. Yeah, really, really good. Definitely a great end to the month. So the month is not over. As I'm filming this, we have about 4 days left in the month, so I honestly might finish some books since then. If I do, you will see them on my Instagram. I always upload monthly wrap-ups at the end of the month with in-depth reviews, so stay tuned for that. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more bookish videos from me. And check out my socials where I post lifestyle content and bookish content. And I hope to see you guys there.